Hello, everyone. Peppe Merolla here. And today, another wonderful, wonderful live stream. And I'm thrilled and honored to have as a special guest, first of all, one of my mentor, and the great Joseph Jola Barbera, which I've been watching his videos, learn from his drumming since I was, let's see, I was 11 years old. So I'm really honored and thrilled to have Mr. the one and only Joseph La Barbera here. Maestro,
Ciao Peppe,
come stai?
bene, bene, e lei?
Io sto benissimo, grazie. So the great John La Barbera, ladies and gentlemen. Here it is, and please, if you guys have any question, the reason why I do this live stream is because not many people nowadays have the opportunity to interact with such artists like Joel Barbera, Carl Allen, Horacio Negro. And usually we go to the concert, and after the concert, usually you sign the autograph, the artist will sell you a CD, and then then they leave. But the reason why I wanted to come up with this idea to have a live stream and have everyone interact with the artist is because we are a giver. So in a way that if you are a jazz drummer, you have the opportunity right now to ask any question to one of the masters, jazz masters, Jola Barbera. So take advantage of it.
Well, I have a question for you, Pepe.
Oh, please, yes.
You said you were 11 years old when you first heard me. What was it? What music was it?
Well, when I was taking drum lessons, I don't know if you know, but I started when I was very young, right?
Mhm.
With my parents, my papa. They both sing, classical Neapolitan songs. And one day, the drummer of the band, my family was on tour, so he got stranded, and somehow I started playing with them. And since then, the drummer never came back. So I was taking start taking drum lesson at the age of 9, 10 years old, and my teacher, which he passed away, rest in peace. He was playing he's playing video cassette, the VHX videos, and he showed me Art Blakey. That was the very first one. Yes, Art
Yes.
Blakey, Buddy Rich,
Mm.
and every week he would play a video, and I saw you playing with the great Bill Evans.
Oh,
Yes, yes, and I was 10, 12 years old around that age,
wow.
and I was like, wow. And my teacher said, hey, those are the musicians, the drummers you want to listen to. This is I didn't know nothing about jazz at the time, but I was attracted to, the very first time was Buddy Rich video. I saw all that technique, and then Art Blakey blew my mind, and then I said I went a little bit over, the technical abilities, and the more you grow, the more you listen to, the more you understand the concept. And what and I loved the way you approach not only technically the the symbols, the right symbols, which is the now I know after many years, thank God, which is the most important thing, for jazz drummers. So I have been following and watching your video for a very long time. You have no idea how happy I am today.
I have pleasure to be here and chat with you, really.
My pleasure. So, but Jola Barbera, because a lot of people, I talked the other day with a friend of mine in New York, and I said, well, you better keep an eye on my page because I'm going to have a Jola Barbera. I said Jola Barbara on my, and he goes like La Barbara. I said, yeah, Jola Barbera, and he goes like, who is he? I said, Jola Barbera, man. Oh, La Barbera.
Yeah, that is the correct pronunciation.
Barbera, Joe La Barbera.
Now, see, La Barbera is the correct pronunciation, but of course, like many families that came over, from Italy to America, the pronunciations changed. Actually, the actual names changed once you got to Ellis Island, But our family name morphed into La Barbara in America. But whenever I go to Italy, forget it. It's got to be
Joe
La
La
Barbara.
Barbera.
And in fact, whenever I've worked with Roberta Gambarini, I love it when she announces my name because she brings the light in pronouncing it.
So, and I also know, first of all, Pat La Barbera, your brother,
Hmm.
that he was, with Buddy Rich Big Band. And so the whole La Barbera family is in the music. Is that correct?
Yeah, my background is very similar to yours. I was born into a household of music, and we had a family band. We had my two brothers. Pat played the clarinet and sax. John played the cornet. My father played the piano or the accordion, depending on if the place had a piano. And then my mother learned to play the bass. So we had a family band, and it was modeled on the kind of the early New Orleans bands. That style of music. So
Wow. So, and at what age did you start playing the drums? What
my
motivated you? What inspired you to be a drummer?
my father inspired me because my father had led bands in my hometown of Mount Morris, New York, from the 30s. And I think over the years, he had all the frustrations that band leaders go through with personnel, and he always had in his mind, if I ever have a family, I'm going to have my own band so I can finally have control over these guys. So, yeah, you understand, right? So my brothers, of course, preceded me, and they were already playing their instruments. By the time they came along, my father just brought me into the basement where the music was. I think I was 5 years old, and he sat me down behind the set of drums. There was a set of Leedy Reliance 1928 drum set with a 28-inch bass drum and one cymbal and snare drum, and that was it. Started right there, and it was straight ahead from that point forward.
So now, usually, my first question when I meet someone that I love his playing and that I'm inspired by, I usually ask them one question that's very important to me. I say, "Who do you listen to?" And because sometimes people will say, "Wow, this guy is great," and I'm gonna ask him, "Man, how you do that?" But they're missing the point, I guess, because it's like one of the most, in my honest opinion, of course. But what I really think is a very important question is, who do you listen to? Who is your hero? Because then I will know exactly where Jola Barbera comes from, or anybody else.
There are many, Pepe. I mean, the first
Okay.
the first jazz that I heard was Gene Krupa. In fact, he came to my hometown in 1957, played for a week. My father took me down there to hear him at a matinee. But the records that my brother Pat started to bring home were Lester Young, so I started hearing Papa Joe, and then he brought home another record with Kenny Clark on it, and then I discovered Shelly Manne, who was a huge impact. Art Blakey, Roy Haynes, Philly Joe. I mean, all the musicians that were considered the greats at the time, and still are considered the greats. I listened to all of them. Buddy Rich, uh,
Yes.
drummers that are well known and drummers that are not so well known. But the thing that I point out to my students about listening and who you're listening to, because they're always wanting to know about how do you play a certain thing, or they'll bring in a record. How did Jack do this, or how did Tony do this? What I'll point out to them is, what were they hearing that inspired them to come up with that idea? And if you back up a couple of bars, you're
That's
going to
true.
hear the genesis for what they created. Elvin and Train, you know, it's a counterpoint that has to exist among the band members. And so, yeah, you definitely have to listen to specific artists to get an idea of how they approach things and to get a concept of style and tradition. But in terms of actually listening to come up with your own ideas, it's important to understand where the information's coming from.
It's important to know the history.
Yeah, it is.
I agree with you 100%, and I really appreciate the fact that you pointed out the fact to say how Tony Williams came up with this. Well, it's all about what's happening in the conversation in the band that is coming from something that inspired him. It's like transmitting stuff to your brain while you're playing. It's okay. That's where we're going. And this is something very deep, actually, that a lot of people they think, no, no, really, they think, well, I'm going to apply those triplets like Tony Williams does, the triplets between the two cymbals and the bass drum, and the da ba 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 ba, and I'm going to apply that anywhere. Well, it's not really that. It's about please the music, let the music come to you. You might come up with something even better than that.
Yeah, there was something, the concept that Bill Evans used to tell young musicians, because on the few occasions we did clinics, naturally every piano player had a question about chord voicing, and Bill would say, "Look, man, I could show you how I voiced this chord on, My Foolish Heart or wherever it was." He said, "But it won't mean anything to you." And he used to say, "I don't want to rob you of the joy of discovery." And what you just said is the joy of discovery. When you take an idea and work it yourself, then something else will come out of that. But to take an idea or a chord voicing out of context and just apply it somewhere because it happens to be an F7 or whatever, that really doesn't make sense. There has to be a reason why he made that choice.
Yes, that's the beauty about jazz music, I guess. Always, always. You can play the same tune twice in the night on the first set, and still, sound different and say different things and express yourself in different ways, in
Yes.
many ways.
Mhm.
That's the beauty about jazz music. And what was your first record like when you put that record on? Something that really hated you, like for the very first time.
You
It's
know,
that
it's probably, I mean, like I said, we were listening to Lester Young, Gigantic Blues, which has a hellacious
record.
drum solo from Papa Joe, man. I'm just killed with Roy Eldridge. But there was the record that Pat brought home called Birdland Stars on Tour, had Kenny Clark on drums. And, Kenny Clark never brought toms to a session unless it paid double scale. That was his thing. So he would show up with a snare drum, a bass drum, a ride cymbal, and his hi-hats. And he plays a solo on this one tune called Hip Boots that just knocked me out. And it's a medium tempo tune. It's not a barn burner, but he makes so much music with that snare drum. And that track, I would have to say, had a deep impact on me for its musicality.
Yeah. Well, he was the one who really started the whole bebop thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Wow. So let's say any future project besides the fact that we all know that you are also a great educator teaching occult arts, which is one of the most prestigious universities in the world, I guess, also because the faculty is great. Actually, I was trying to get there, but anyway, it's a
We,
long story.
we were very sorry that you weren't able to come to us, Pepe. Believe me, everyone. But, uh, that is probably going to be taking up most of my time going forward because I stopped touring 2 years ago. I just decided I wanted to stay close to home. I still have my band, and
Yeah.
we love to play together when we can. Of course, right now, all of that's on hold. So I'd have to say, right now, all my energies are being devoted toward gearing up for the fall and the potential of teaching primarily online and then trying to figure out ways to improve that experience with the students. And then I'm practicing, of course.
No, oh yeah, especially nowadays, it must be weird. It is weird for me. I've been teaching online for the last 5 or 6 years. Get some students online in Italy. I got some people in New York. But the thing is, now I see that this is becoming the future. This is something that eventually is going to be online, and I feel like I'm already missing the idea to be teaching or going to a classroom, and experience the other musicians' presence and ideas and opinion in the class, where I can see my peers or my students or whatever, to get up and play in a combo and say, okay, let's change. I mean, I'm already missing that, because this is music. This is not about coding. This is music. Music, to me, in my honest opinion, of course, to me is like, I want to see you, you play. I want to see you sweat. I want to see you, making a mistake. I want to say, wow, that's great. And I want to get inspired by being in the class and see somebody to get up and do something and inspired me, or vice versa. I think with the online thing, we got to get used to different things, I guess, because it's not going to be the same. For me as a teacher, or maybe as a student, I feel like, okay, I can learn from the teacher, yes, because that's very easy. Actually, it is working fine. I think this is a brilliant idea, but I'll be missing the other, the contact with the people, with the human being, which I'm about that. I love to hug people. Hey, what's happening, my friend? I'm a people person. So to me, it's like, okay, maybe I have to invent the chat with at least 20 people in one chat.
Pepe, I totally agree with you. And here's the thing: what we do is totally reliant on communication and interaction live and in the moment, right? And what we teach is based on that. And of course, we all miss that. My heart goes out to students that are graduating right now. I mean, think back to when you left school and hit the scene in New York, right? The opportunities, I'm sure you struggled for a while, but the opportunities were available to you because you could play, and one thing led to another. Students that are graduating today are experiencing a completely different world. But the fact is, we have no control over these circumstances. We have to adapt now for the eventuality of things not improving very quickly. My hope, of course, like everyone else's, is that it's going to get back to a place where we can all go out and perform and interact live. But for right now, it's like when my ensemble would meet, and maybe the bass player didn't show up, and students are like freaked out. It's like, what are we going to do? And what I always tell them is, don't focus on what's missing. Focus on what's here right now, right? So don't try to compensate for the fact that bass player is not here or whoever didn't show up, right? Let's work with what we got and make something right now. I know it sounds easy for me to say that, but this is what I think we have to focus on right now. And what I'm hopeful for is that the technology is going to catch up to the point where we're actually able to interact with less, audio latency and actually be able to make some sense of it. But it certainly isn't going to replace the real thing, by no way. But this is what we're dealing with right now, right?
Yeah, but eventually, hopefully, I believe that hopefully, eventually, we will go back to what it was.
Yeah.
But in a way, see, the way I approached this pandemic, this problem that we're going through right now, the COVID-19 and all what's happening in around it, is to face it with, like you said, with the right attitude.
Yeah.
I tried to reinvent myself. I went back, in the past. I wanted to face this as a time for me to work on stuff that I'm weak on, my weakness.
Hmm.
In fact, I picked up my trumpet again, and I'm playing my trumpet again. I
Look
started,
at you. Come on. I haven't
huh?
heard you play. I haven't heard you play the trumpet, have I?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I want to hear you. You and Joey D, man. Come on.
No, no, no. Let me fix this camera here. I got that. Here. I picked up my trumpet again.
Great, man. Yeah.
A little bit at the time, because I graduated as a classical trumpet player in Italy.
I
I
see.
got my master in classical trumpet, my diploma, in classical trumpet. But I played trumpet, the classical trumpet, for a long time. But then I stopped because my first thing is this lady right here. That's my
Right.
baby. But I wanted to pick up my trumpet again, one note at a time. As you know, trumpet, it's very, very hard to go back to it, especially if you don't play for 12 years, 13, yeah.
Hmm.
So after 13 years, now I'm doing the long tone, all the scales. My lips, after 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I'm dead.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of patience, just like, it's different than piano or drums. Trumpet, this little thing, the mouthpiece, this is like, yeah, because we got a little muscle here.
Yeah.
So after 2 or 3 minutes, I get tired. So in a way, I'm taking this period of time.
Mhm.
First of all, to go back, I separate the snare drum away from the drum set, and I wanted to go back to practice just my finger control, all that stuff, and that's what I do. So in a way that maybe this is will only get me better, and I'm taking this in a positive way. In other words,
Hmm.
try to get better, because this sooner or later is going to end, and it's gonna be wonderful. I believe in that. Maybe I'm a dreamer, but I believe in that. I believe that each one of us, sooner or later, we're all going to go out and play concert again. And it's important. This cannot be the end of it. I mean, this is.
I agree with you, Pepe. And that is the right attitude to have. This is what I'm telling all my students too. Let's face it, people are telling you to stay home and practice, right? So do it. Don't waste this time, because that once you hit the scene and you start working as a professional musician, your free time disappears very quickly, man. That's hard to
Yeah.
find practice. So you have to take advantage of these downtimes. I used to tell students under normal circumstances, they'd always be saying, "Oh, January's so slow," or February's slow, and during the year for gigs. Well, man, let's practice then. Use this time now, because it's not going to last. You're going to get busy again, and you won't
No, it
have.
will happen. It will happen. I'm having a great time spending time with my family, with
Good.
my girls, and once in a while we just go out to buy grocery, the grocery store, grocery stuff, and yeah, we just get in the car and go for a car ride somewhere without getting out. If we get out of the car, we might get out in the spot where nobody's around,
Hmm.
but just driving the car on the freeway with the windows down, and
Yeah.
then the wind coming through the car, and listen to some nice music while I'm driving, and then I go back home. We feel better.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's beautiful. Um, so we're facing it with the right attitude. I believe it's like to spend time with the family, think positive, and practice. That's what I'm doing right now. I see myself as a student, as I always did anyway. So I never felt, that I always saw myself as a student, and that's going to be for the rest of my life, in my
Well,
opinion.
true for all of us, Pepe. We're all students of this music and the instrument.
So I got a question for the great Joseph La Barbera. How did you get, besides, I know we got to go back to what it leads you to a play with Elevens. There is a road that you have to take that leaded you to play with Elevens. But how did you get that gig?
Oh, when Bill was looking for a drummer, he asked around town, and one of his closest and oldest friends was Joe Puma, the guitar player. And they used to go to the racetrack together. And I was working every Monday night with Joe at a club called Jimmy Weston's on 56th Street, I believe, on the East Side. And so Joe told Bill about me, and then I also was working a gig with Toots Thielemans at the time, and Toots and Bill were recording the album together. So Toots told him about me, and he came into the club to hear me one night with Helen. And then shortly thereafter, I got a phone call from Helen asking me to come over to the Vanguard and sit in for a set. So that's how that all came about, just word of mouth recommendation.
So you just mentioned that Bill Evans was recording with Toots Stillman. So you're talking about Infinity.
Affinity.
Yeah, Affinity.
Yeah.
And that's with Larry Schneider on the saxophone.
Exactly right. Yeah. Bill heard Larry Schneider play at the Vanguard one night with Thad and Mel's band, was totally knocked out. And so he went right up to Larry and said, man, I love the way you played that ballad. And then Larry did that album, and then he did the album that we did with the quintet with Tom Harrell.
Speaking of Larry Schneider, he lives right here in the Bay Area. We're very good friends, actually.
Oh man, I haven't seen him since we did that date. I don't believe, man. Wonderful musician.
Yeah. Well, maybe in private, I might send you his phone number.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lives right here in Berkeley. We played many gigs together. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
A wonderful, wonderful musician. I think, he's one of the most underrated tenor saxophone player.
Yeah, well, that's easy to achieve in this world, unfortunately, man. If you're not in everybody's face all the time, and living in San Francisco or Los Angeles or wherever, people can forget about you, but he can really play.
Yeah. Well, Larry's always at home practicing, but he tours with his own band, to Europe. He has some people there. But he doesn't go out. He just said, man, let's get together at my house. Let's play a bunch of tunes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just go to his place or come to my place here, and we play one tune, 40 minutes. That's it. Larry Schneider, what a great musician. That's So, and Paul LaBarbera, your brother, John LaBarbera. Wait a minute, John LaBarbera has the big band. John is still there. This big band, guys still working.
Well, John had written an album of music we were going to record this month, in fact, in New York, and of course, everything got postponed. So, yeah, John's still writing. Certainly, my favorite big band writer, and he retired from teaching 2 or 3 years ago. Pat just retired, I think, last year after almost 40 years. And so, yeah, John's still writing, still working on music. He does a weekly radio broadcast on the PBS station from Louisville, Kentucky, jazz show. Yeah, he's still into it. Those two guys were always showing me the way. They were ahead of me, and so they introduced me to a lot of music and a lot of people, and I'm grateful for that. Having brothers that you're close with your entire life, it's a blessing, man.
Do they all live in Los Angeles, West Coast area?
John lives in Georgetown, Indiana. He taught at the University of Louisville for 22 years. Pat lives in Toronto. He married. He's married to a Canadian woman, and he has children up there, and has raised his family there, and it's been a good scene for him, So we're not close together in distance, but we talk constantly, and always have.
Of course, that's your blood.
Yeah,
and wow, this is a great. What would you suggest to a young drummer? First of all, who was your drum teacher?
My father taught me how to hold the sticks, and he sat me down behind the drums. But of all the instruments in the house, and believe me, my father could play them all, from all the brass, all the. I mean, he taught me to play clarinet and saxophone from the time I was 7 when my embouchure started to develop. So I played clarinet and saxophone all the way through high school, right? So, but the drums was probably the instrument he had the least training on himself, or had taught him, because he taught himself all these instruments. He had no teacher at all. He taught himself all the instruments. But Alan Dawson was my first drum instructor when I got to Berkeley, and he had to clean up a few messes, man. But he got me on the right track, and in a very short amount of time, I was able to do things that I should have already been able to do, and I was moving forward. Also, Fred Buda, who was on the faculty at Berkeley at that time, was helping me out with orchestral things. So yeah, I was very fortunate. But Alan was the first one, and then Fred. I think I had Fred for a semester, and then after Berkeley, I found a drummer in Rochester who was he was either in the Rochester Philharmonic or he was a first sub. His name was John McNeil, I believe. Boy, I'm spacing on it. But this guy got me started on Cerrone and Wilcoxon, and then one thing leads to another. Then once you start going down that path, I could certainly use more instruction, but I'm grateful for what I had, and
Of course.
and it certainly helped me to understand how to study and how to practice. So and then you just carry on from there. But Alan was my one primary drum instructor.
You in this little in this answer, what you just said, I capture one thing that it really connected. It connected me to my way of thinking, and I agree with you 100%. To learn how to practice.
Mm.
That's, I think, for any instrument, I believe. And you can confirm that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that it's not only about practicing, the to understand the motion of a certain technique or finger control or whatever. It's also about muscle memory, like to get an understanding of how this works in order to do it at any time.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. And, one of the things that you develop an eye and an ear for as a teacher for many years is to be able to see those problems in a student and to help them to correct them, right? Because typically if a student is struggling with something, whether it's on the drum set or hand to hand, it's because something isn't sitting right. Some part of the grip or some part of the form. Typically what I see with young players is that they are trying to generate all of their control from the wrists going forward, nothing from the arms, So these are the things that you're watching for, and you probably went through them yourself, so you know what it involves to fix it. But yeah, there is a certain amount of what we call muscle memory or training in form that you have to go through that. When I watch your videos, and when I love all your videos that you post, especially the hand control things, the 5-stroke rolls in one hand, that stuff, and the triplets. The amount of practice that you had to put in to get it to the level that you have it at, Pepe, is, no one can understand that unless they've done it themselves, right? No one can comprehend how much time you put in to get to that level, but that's what it takes. And you know it, and I know it.
Well, that takes all my life. I'm still improving that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why from the 5-stroke roll, which, I use the rebound stroke control.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they go like, so everything starts from the fingers. Now I would like to express myself and let them understand. It's not just the fingers. It's the fulcrum. How much pressure you put, it doesn't be that much, to be able to control with one motion and get 5 notes. Da, 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 da. It's not from this. It's not from here. Here we control, the stick for bouncing, but it's not from here. And they said, "Man, I was trying to." And then once I achieved the 5 stroke roll, now I'm going to 7 and 9 stroke roll. The reason why I'm doing that is because if I push myself to that level, when I play the 5, it's going to be so easy for me.
That's an old Charlie Parker trick, man. If he had a drummer on a gig that wasn't cutting it, he'd count off a tune like super fast and just like, put the guy through hell. He would struggle all, and then he'd stop, and then he'd count off the same tune about a 3/4 slower. So at this tempo, he can't make it. But at this tempo, now he's all warmed up. He's got all the kinks out. Now
That's it.
same approach.
But it's a way that I approach. Like if you teach me a technique and I see it, and you teach me that, I always, once I achieve, that I'm able to play that technique that you just teach me. You teach me that, I get it, I absorb it. Then for some reason, my brain, and it's a natural to me, since I was a little kid, I will take that technique and I make it mine, and I try to come up with something using what you taught me.
Mm.
So I don't know if I make sense.
Of course you do. I mean, look, that's
Yeah.
the whole idea behind jazz, man. Right? Is to make it personal.
Yeah.
We all study, or most of us study the same material, right? I mean, saxophone players go through all the books they go through. Trumpet
Yeah.
players, piano players. There's standard repertoire for everything, right? It's how do you interpret it that distinguishes you from everybody else.
How you make a yours, and I using your creativity, because double stroke roll, 5 stroke roll, 7, 9, or whatever, flam flam paradigm,
Yeah,
those didn't change.
right.
That's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Another question. Let's see. As you see, as you noticed, I'm sure I didn't prepare any questions. This is just like, it's a way to have a dialogue, and have a conversation, express opinion, talk about projects. It's not like a formal like interview. Like, okay, this is more like a relaxed video. So I apologize if I didn't put any wrote down any questions or anything like
We're
that.
having a conversation here, Pepe.
Um, let's see. I had it right here in my mind. Oh, yes. How it's a there you go. No, how important it is uh, uh, for a student to transcribe other drummers, and if it is important, how important it is not to sound like them.
Right. Well, I mean, I found it very helpful to imitate other drummers coming up. No one should imitate another drummer with the intention of making that their sound. It's like what I just said about standard repertoire.
Yes.
In every other instrument, there is a set of standard repertoire. I think for saxophone players, it's the Slaminsky book. For trumpet players, it's the Arbin book. For piano players, it's the Bach, Goldberg variations, whatever. For drum set, the standard repertoire are the solos that these great musicians created. So by transcribing them and just simply playing through what someone else has played through, you're improving your technique and you're gaining insight into how that person improvises. Then you can leave that. But once you can play it, it's like saying you can play, whatever out of whatever study book that a
Right.
win will play out of. Now you can move on to someone else. When I think about all the different drummers that I imitated, and then for a period there, I was really heavily into Elvin. And then when I got to New York, the first time I had to play opposite Elvin at the bottom line, I thought, oh my God, man, this is it. people are going to discover what a fraud I am. I play just like Elvin Jones. Well, I played my set, with whoever I was playing with. And then Elvin got on stage and played, and I thought, holy mackerel, I don't sound anything like this guy, man, because nobody could, right? You take what you can from these artists, and as you play it, you're making it your own, right?
No, I agree 100%. That's exactly the way I think. Um, so, I mean, there is no time at the same time, even like if we transcribe and take, all the phrasing and the sticking. And first of all, if me, Pepe, if I transcribe someone, it's because I feel related to that drumming. Like if I feel it in my bones, if I hear a phrasing or a cymbal beat, that I feel like, whoa, that's like, it's like I belong to that. It's like I'm related. I feel like, wow, that's the way I feel it. So then, if I don't understand the sticking, I will transcribe and write down the part, the music, the rhythm that he's playing or whatever. But at the same time, when we play music, we don't have no time to think. Of saying, okay, now I'm going to apply what Philly Joe Joe did here, right now. Boom. I mean, when we play music, you close your eyes, and the music will get all over your body and your brain. That you have no time to think about the licks that you were transcribing 2 days before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that happens to you, but I tried it one time, and every time I try to do something that I practice at home on the gig, that's the time that excuse my French, I fuck it up. I make a mistake.
Yeah.
But if I close my eyes and I just let it go, let the music come to me and just like play what I feel inside, I might suck, but it's me.
Yeah, that's typical, and I've experienced the same exact thing, Pepe. Louis Armstrong listened to Nick LaRocca with the original Dixieland Jazz Band. Father Hines listened to Louis. Lester Young listened to I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's recordings of Charlie Parker playing along with Lionel Hampton records. Everybody has gone, not everybody, but the greats in this music have gone through this process where they have learned from the previous generation. It's study, it is practice. It's not designed to dictate your style. It's just there as a way to inform you about how someone else approached it. Now it's up to you to take that and turn it into something else, all your own.
Yes. Yeah, I was a very good friend with the great Mickey Rooker.
Mm.
And Mickey loved Philly Joe.
Yeah.
We used to have I was living in a town before I came back here to San Francisco. I was living close to Philadelphia in a town called Yardley, PA, Pennsylvania, close to New Hope, New Town. I was living in Yardley, which was very convenient for me because I got kids, good schools. I was living in a nice townhouse with finished basement where I can play my drums.
Nice.
And it was only 1 hour away from New York City. We take 29 to Turnpike. That's it. Exit 7A. That's it. That's the exit for Holland Tunnel. and it was like 25 minutes away from Philly. And we used to have the boys' night, which was me, Mickey Roker, and Francesco Crinidi, and another guy that, Chris. So we used to get at the end of the last Tuesday of each month, we used to have the dinner at my head place at Mickey's house. Mickey loved to cook. And, so this went on for almost 7 years, 8 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So Mickey used to come to my house and play with my kids. My girls on his laps, and he's having dinner at my place. We used to go pick him up, and he always was checking out Buddy Rich. He loved Buddy Rich. He loved Philly Joe. He was never listened to himself, and he played with so many people. He recorded with so many people,
Yeah.
you know. And, and I'd be like, Mickey, who you listen to? He was like, well, I'm listening to Philly Joe, man. And the same thing, Jimmy Cobb in New York City. One night, I was at Smoke, a jazz club. It's on Broadway at 106. And by the time I'm getting into the club, I see Jimmy Cobb coming out of the club with a headphone in his head. And he goes, Mr. Cobb, Mr. Cobb, hey. I said, Mr. Cobb, who you listen to? And he goes like, I'm listening to Jimmy Cobb. And then, no, I'm listening to, excuse me. I'm listening to Philly Joe.
Oh, okay. Now it makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I'm listening to Philly Joe. So this is anyway, why was I saying that for? Anyway.
I see Mickey Roker quite often in Boston when I was at Berkeley because he used to come through town with a wonderful band, Art Farmer, Jimmy Heath Quintet with Walter Booker and Cedar Walton on piano. It was killing, man. And Mickey always sounded great. He is one of the great drummers, and there's so many.
He was a swinger.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that I don't listen to myself. I hear myself all the time when I sit down to the drums. Why do I need to listen to myself on a record? I will listen to anybody that sounds good, and there's so many fine drummers out there today, man. It's
You
hard
will know yourself. I will listen to yourself. I'm listening to you and many others. But yeah, I agree with you. I have to hear what I do, but I love to hear other people. That's why that's what inspires me, and you're one of them.
Well, thank you.
You are one of them. So let me think of maybe a last question.
Okay.
Let's see. So, what would you suggest to a young, upcoming musician, drummer? What's the advice as an experienced artist like yourself, as a teacher, and as a human being? What would you tell a very young student who wants to go and become a musician?
You have to be patient, and you have to have realistic expectations too. Sometimes, young people are always in a hurry, right? And then I understand that. I was in a hurry too. You've got to be willing to take the time and devote yourself to playing and stay with it. Don't give up, even if you're not successful right away, and enjoy the process. It's again at this end of my life, it's easier to say that than it is to do it. But believe me, if you dedicate yourself to something, you're going to succeed. You may not get rich or be famous, but you're going to succeed at it. And if your goal is to be a musician and to be able to play with the best musicians around, to me, that's an admirable goal. And that is a realistic goal. And that's something you can definitely work toward. You've got to put yourself in a scene where there are musicians that you can aspire to play with, and that's your mark, right? That's your goal. You're aiming to be able to play with these musicians. So it'll happen if you just work toward it. And then, as again, I refer back to Bill Evans. He used to say to people, work on the music and all the benefits will flow from that, right? If you work on your playing, then everything that you're hoping for is probably going to happen. There's no guarantees, of course, but that's the best advice I can give. Have realistic expectations, commit to it, and stay with it.
Wow, that's wonderful. That I can relate to that. I'm still committing and still waiting, which I love it though. I'm very happy because music to me is about happiness and how happy I feel every time I play the drums. So as long as that I'm happy, everything comes along with it. you know, everything comes with it.
Yeah.
You know, music is about happiness. That's great. Now you're gonna hate me for this, but I forgot to ask you something very important.
Oh,
You have a few minutes.
sure. Yeah, man, go ahead.
What was Bill Evans? What kind of person was he? As
Right.
a band leader, as a friend, as a human being? What kind of person was
He
he?
was
Was he
won- wonderful. No, he was a wonderful guy. I mean, he really was like anybody else. You know, very personable, funny, um, not egotistical. You know, he liked hanging out. You know, how can I describe him? He was a really a good guy, smart.
yeah,
Uh, just you have to separate the his personality from his music because you can be awestruck when you hear him play, like Elvin, right? The, their music is so incredible, so remarkable that sometimes you can overlook the person behind it. But Bill was very wonderful guy. I spent a lot of time with him at his apartment because I used to stay with him when we would work in New York, or if I had another gig in New York, I would stay with him or work the gig and hang out with him during the day because you know my family we'd moved up to Kingston, New York when my wife got pregnant and my daughter was born. But great guy, really wonderful to hang out with and interesting. Yeah. And a lot of things in our life were similar. You know, we listened to a lot of the same music growing up. We were both in the army in an army band. You know, we were both Boy Scouts. We had a lot of stuff to talk about. Good guy.
you know, I love his approach to the harmony on the piano. I mean, he still is, in a way, one of the deepest when it comes down to harmony, the approach of harmony on the piano harmony. I haven't heard anybody still nowadays, still so many great pianists and please God, you know. But Bill Evans, just the approach, the harmony, how deep he was on play two chords and make you happy and make you sad and make you, you know, it gets you, it will take you to somewhere else with this way of approaching the chords.
Mm.
And that's why I wanted to ask you because musically speaking, I think that guy, the great Bill Evans, was out of this world. The way he approached the harmony, the way he, you
Well, that
know,
was see, again, Pepe. That's a very personal experience. He always credited his theory teacher from southeastern Louisiana, Gretchen McGee. And but you know, back then there were no jazz programs. You didn't go to school to learn jazz like you can go to Berkeley or North Texas or any school in America now, right? Back then it was conservatory training with the same kind of fundamental knowledge that any music student was going to get. But Bill was able to take that knowledge and put his own spin on it. He was able to develop things his own way. And believe me, it was a step-by-step process. He spoke about this many times. He took his time in developing this idea of how he was going to create and how he was going to how he wanted to have harmonies sound and how they were going to move. You know, there was no formula to it. It was a step-by-step process that he built by himself, and that's kind of how it works. And if you listen to McCoy Tyner, it's the same thing. If you listen to Wynton Kelly, it's the same thing. If you listen
yeah,
to Chick, it's the same thing. You know, you name it.
Ahmad Jamal.
Yeah, exactly. Each individual has to define for themselves how they're going to sound based on the knowledge that they have. And here's another thing that Bill used to say that has always resonated with me. You've got to let your intuition guide your knowledge. You know, people talk about being an intuitive player or someone who seems very spontaneous. It's only going to work if there's something backing it up. It's only going to work if you've got something to draw on. So getting back to your question about transcribing and all of that, I've had a few students in the past over the years, who would say, "Oh man, I don't want to transcribe anybody. I don't want to, disrupt my creative genius." I mean, maybe they don't put it exactly that way, but that's what they're thinking, right? Well, basically, what they're saying is they don't want to spend the time. But the fact is, all of the greats in this music have done that, and that's part of the knowledge that they take forward. And that's part of the knowledge that they draw on in the heat of the moment. Like you said, you can't possibly be pulling, thinking in advance what you're going to play. It just comes. And what comes is stored in here, and your brain and that your intuition and that split second is saying, try this. Bam. That's what you go for. You've got to have something to draw from.
You said it right. A lot of people, they don't want to spend the time.
Mhm.
That's why most of them, they will fail in a certain, because if you want to sound, if you love your instrument, if you love music, you have to transcribe to be able to understand what happened before you can move forward in a way. So
You
thank
know,
you so
I'm
much.
I'm 72 years old. I still love the drums like it's the first time I am sitting down to them. I don't even mind packing them up and setting them up and carrying them to the club. Honestly, it's part of my process. I actually enjoy making sure everything is just right, and then it begins, right? And so
Well,
I, the love affair with the drums for me has never gone away. I know it's the same for you. It's the same for Jimmy Cobb, and it's the same for everybody that's out there playing. We love this instrument and we love this music, and that's what keeps us going. That's why we're happy, right?
oh, yeah, definitely. And besides, first of all, you said I'm 72, and I will say cent'anni, 100 years. No, 100 years with healthy, because
I
that's healthy, happiness, always there. And
know.
then two, whatever it is, when we set up our instrument, when we have a gig and we have to set up our instrument, that's what we get paid for, to
Yeah.
set up and break down, because
Mhm.
the music is free. Because you are playing something on that gig for 2 hours that it took you 60 years to get to that point.
Yep.
And whatever money you're making is not worth it, is not enough to pay what what you're giving them in an hour set. You know what
That's
I'm saying?
I do. I totally agree. I always used to think that what I'm really being paid for is to leave my happy home and go far, far away, and where once I'm playing, it's my time. Now I'm grooving.
So, Joe, I really wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and it was a pleasure. It's an honor to have you here chatting with me, and hopefully we will see each other soon. And thank you for being my guest. Much love to the family. It was a great, great, very informative, a great live stream. And I hope that eventually all those guys that are going to watch this video, they're going to get something out of this, because
Pleasure.
there was a lot of wisdom in you in this video.
Thank you, Pepe. It's really a pleasure to speak with you, my friend, anytime. And I wish you and your family all the best up there. Stay safe.
Uh,
And yeah, hope that we see each other face to face.
yes,
I'm counting on you cooking for me one of these days, man.
I'll cook. Next time I come to LA, I'll let you know. We'll
Yep.
get together. We both cook.
All right. That's a date.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
Pepe.
you.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, and that was the great Joseph La Barbera, wonderful drummer, great musician, one of my mentor as well. Uh, well, tomorrow, Wednesday, June 30th, same time, I think is at 3 o'clock p.m. actually, if I'm not mistaken. But tomorrow, I'm going to have a special guest which has a special place in my heart. John John Farnsworth, great tenor saxophone player, a friend, and there's a lot of history between him and I, and why he is one of the most important person to me, especially in my career since I moved to New York City. So tomorrow with John Farnsworth. Thank you again to the great Joseph La Barbera for being here today. There's going to be so many other guests. Been blessed, and thank you, all of you guys, all of you, for trusting and believe in this project. Thank you. Much love. Peppe Merolla. Stay tuned. See you tomorrow. Ciao. Bene.